There's a story hidden in the shadows of American history, a story that's rarely taught, almost forgotten, and yet it may have played a role in one of the most powerful decisions ever made in the White House. In the midst of the Civil War, when death and grief swept the nation like wildfire, President Abraham Lincoln faced a choice that would define his legacy: to sign or delay the Emancipation Proclamation. But what if I told you that before making that decision, Lincoln sat in a dimly lit room in the White House in silence as a 21-year-old trance medium fell into a spiritual possession, and a voice claiming to be the spirit of Daniel Webster spoke through her, commanding him to not wait, to not bend to pressure, but to free the enslaved in the name of Providence. So tonight, we're diving into the strange and secret world of Nettie Coburn, a young spiritualist medium whose mysterious connection to the Lincoln family led her straight into the Red Room of the White House, and possibly into the heart of history. This is the story of spirits, seances, and a president at war with both a nation and his own soul. Here's the part that makes you really sit back and wonder. Abraham Lincoln, the President of the United States, during the bloodiest war in our nation's history, consulted a psychic before signing the Emancipation Proclamation. So imagine what a gifted advisor could help you understand about your own personal path. And if you don't know a trusted advisor, I got you. This video is sponsored by Psychic Source, the oldest and most trusted psychic service in the industry, with over 35 years of experience connecting people to clarity, healing, and higher insight. Ever since partnering with Psychic Source, I have been blowing up their hotline because with so much changing in my life right now, it's been very, very nice having a go-to for clarity. I'm not going to lie, I was skeptical at first, like, who's about to pick up this call, Miss Cleo? But within minutes, my advisor zeroed in on exactly what I was going through. The reading was clear, direct, and honestly checked me a little. I'm the type to think I'm always right, but my spirit guides had other opinions, and she wasn't afraid to let me know. That's what I love about Psychic Source. Their advisors aren't random people giving vague advice. Out of everyone who applies, only 2% are selected to work with them. Every advisor is vetted, follows a strict code of ethics, and is there to genuinely uplift and empower you. You can talk to an advisor however you feel most comfortable: phone call, video chat, or even text, whatever works for you. Something I appreciate is that they donate 1% of every purchase to a charity you choose, at no cost to you. If you've been curious, or maybe you've tried readings before but haven't quite found your person, I really recommend giving Psychic Source a try. Right now, they're offering my audience a special deal for new customers, up to 40 minutes for just $19.80. That's a $240 value, which is incredible. No other service comes close to offering this kind of deal. So if you have a quick question like, should I leave this man, yes or no, you can get that done in a minute or two and keep the rest of your minutes for your next session. Again, just head to trypsychicsource.com/yaya10 or click the link in my description and use code yaya10 to connect with someone right now. So give them a try, and thanks again to Psychic Source for sponsoring today's video. So let's get back to the reading and figure out why Abraham Lincoln had to consult a psychic in order to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. Like, what were you going through? So Henrietta Coburn, we're going to call her Nettie in this video, was born in 1841 in Connecticut and became known as a talented trance medium in the spiritualist community. So in 1862, Nettie traveled to Washington, D.C. to care for her sick brother, who was a Union soldier hospitalized there. Now that same year, First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln was grieving the death of her son, 11-year-old Willie, in February 1862. So through her grief, she discovered and became keenly interested in spiritualism. Mary attended seances in Washington and sought out reputable mediums in hopes of contacting her lost child. It was in this context that Mary Mary Lincoln first met Nettie Coburn and quickly became impressed by her abilities. So Mary Lincoln encountered Nettie at the Georgetown home of Cranstone Laurie. Now, Mary had initially gone to the Laurie home to witness spiritual phenomena that would go on produced by Laurie's daughter, who happened to be a medium as well. So she would go to this home filled with spiritualists where they did their work. She would sit back and watch. So that night, that's when Mary Lincoln learned about Nettie. Like, listen, she's good. She knows what she's doing. She knows how to communicate with spirit. So Mary's like, oh my gosh, I need to speak with her because she could help communicate with my son. Now, that night that Mary met Nettie, Nettie wasn't performing how she usually does. She was just exhausted and sad that day because her efforts to secure an army furlough for her sick brother had failed. But Mary really wanted to communicate with her and like experience her work. So Mary told her, listen, my husband is the president, girl. If you need that furlough, you're going to get that furlough. Trust me. So that made Nettie feel a lot better. She was able to focus on her work. So she began her work and fell into a trance. For over an hour, a new and powerful influence took over her, and that spirit was able to communicate with Mary. Everything she communicated was spot on. Mary left like, wow, that's the message that I needed. And of course, on her end, she fulfilled her promise and gave Mary that furlough. And she told Nettie, listen, you're good at what you do. This is not going to be our last session. Please do not leave Washington. So First Lady Mary wanted to make sure that Nettie stayed close, so much so that she actually gave her a job as well in DC to make sure she stayed close by. And this began Nettie's role as a spiritual advisor in the Lincoln Circle. And soon First Lady Mary was arranging for Nettie to conduct seances for the president himself. And Nettie's first sitting with President Abraham Lincoln took place in late December 1862. Mary Lincoln invited Nettie along with the Laurie family, because they're mediums as well, to the executive mansion for an evening seance around 8 p.m. In attendance were President Lincoln, First Lady Lincoln, Mr. and Mrs. Cranstone Laurie, the Laurie's daughters, Congressman Daniel E. Sums of Maine, and a few other people. So everybody's in the red room. The president was introduced to Nettie Coburn for the first time, and Lincoln placed a hand on the medium's head and said, so this is our little Nettie, is it, that we have heard so much about? Because of course First Lady Mary was going home telling her husband all about the seances and the messages that she received from spirit. So President Lincoln now is able to place a face with the seances. Nettie, of course, is nervous and shy on her end because she's like, oh my gosh, I'm about to perform a seance for the president. What is going on? She's only 21. This is a big deal. So everyone took their seats in a circle for the seance. Nettie fell into a deep trance, losing all consciousness of her surroundings as a spirit took over her voice. For more than an hour, the entranced Nettie addressed President Lincoln with passion on policy matters, delivering messages that he was contemplating personally to himself. Much of this spirit monologue seemed understandable to President Lincoln. Others around him, of course, aren't understanding all of this policy jabber and what's going on, all of these terms, but President Lincoln knew exactly what she was talking about, and she was able to provide clarity on a lot of things. Now, she got to the topic of the Emancipation Proclamation, which is the decree to free enslaved people in Confederate-held territory that Lincoln had drafted but not yet officially issued at this moment. Nettie, speaking as the spirit's mouthpiece, urged the president not to terminate the terms and to not delay it but enforce it as a law beyond the opening of the year. She went on to declare that this act of emancipation would be the crowning event of his administration and of his life and what he would be known for. Even though, as the spirit noted, strong parties were pressuring Lincoln to postpone or weaken it, the entranced Nettie, however, implored President Lincoln to stand firm against all counsels of delay and to fearlessly perform the work and fulfill the mission for which he had been raised up by an overruling providence. So later, those in the room recalled that the timid young woman seemed to transform during this oration. They lost sight of the timid girl. They weren't looking at a little 21-year-old. They were looking at almost a masculine spirit that was speaking with almost divine command through her. So before, she was like, oh, thank you so much, President Lincoln, I'm happy to be here. But when she was in a trance, she's like, thou shalt not delay the emancipation. She was speaking like that, very authoritative. President Lincoln listened intently, arms folded, sitting there nodding as she's going on and sharing the messages from spirit, because she was on a roll, so he did not want to interrupt. So Nettie finally regained consciousness. She saw Lincoln sitting back studying her. She's like, oh my gosh, what did I just say? Because once she's out of the trance, she doesn't fully remember in the moment what was going on. So she's hoping she didn't say too much, she didn't say too little, she didn't sound crazy. So he's like, okay. So at this point, everyone else in the room is like, okay, President Lincoln, so like, what was she talking about? Why are you contemplating this? What's going on? They want to know the details, right? President Lincoln just answered everybody and said, it is taking all of my nerve and strength to withstand such a pressure. He acknowledged, confirming that influential voices had urged him to defer or delay the emancipation policy. So this reading was confirmation that he should move forward. And before departing, Abraham Lincoln turned to Nettie, placing his hand warmly on her head again and said, my child, you possess a very singular gift, but it is of God, I have no doubt. So this was not the last seance President Lincoln attended or even scheduled, because he was just so wowed by this girl's gifts. So anytime he just needed clarity on something, a seance took place with people that he trusted, and along with First Lady Mary. But this seance is considered the most famous one because of the topic of Emancipation Proclamation. So overall, the seance struck a chord with him. His respectful, almost parental interaction with Nettie, afterward calling her my child and affirming her gift was a God, so for her not to feel bad about it, because spirituality at that time was being demonized as well. So the president telling Nettie like, your gift is of God and you're spot on, it really gave her reassurance as well. So within a week of that seance, on January 1st, 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation into law exactly as scheduled, and Nettie and other spiritualists took him signing this proclamation as validation. As we know, Lincoln took her advice and released the proclamation in a matter of days, which shows that he had some type of trust in Nettie's spiritual gifts. President Lincoln never explicitly or publicly credited a medium for influencing his decision, because we all know the backlash that he would have faced if he said, yeah, you know, a spiritualist told me to go ahead and sign it. People would be like, okay, so what's going on? But just the overall timing of Nettie's speech clearly aligned with Lincoln's own convictions. It's possible that her passionate message gave him an extra boost of confidence for him to go ahead and sign the Emancipation Proclamation, like giving him the clarity to not, wave it off, or should I do it? Should I not do it? Is this the right decision? During Nettie's seances, Lincoln's typical reaction was a mix of open-minded curiosity and gentle skepticism. He did not overtly endorse the supernatural origin of the messages, but he wasn't opposed to it. He would still listen respectfully. After the first seance, he explicitly told Nettie that this gift is of God, I have no doubt about it, indicating he felt her gift. Like, I know some people are going to be suspicious of it, but I felt your presence. The messages Nettie conveyed ranged from national policy to military, moral matters, personal issues, all delivered with a tone of urgent moral counsel. Abraham Lincoln's responses suggest he was thoughtful and intrigued, if not entirely convinced. He absorbed the advice that aligned with his own sense of duty and politely set aside any exaggerations or anything that didn't sit with him. And that goes for any reading. Take what sticks, leave the rest. All readings are just a form of guidance, not telling you exactly what to do. So you don't have to take away all the information. You still have the right to make your own decisions. Now, Mary Lincoln herself, while a believer, was sensitive to appearances. She kept these sessions relatively private, only invited people that she trusted, because she didn't want word getting out like the First Lady is holding these little witch meetings in her house. So she was very cautious about that. Even though the word still got out and Washington social newspapers got wind of the Lincolns' occult activities, as they called it, and occasionally reported on them, these accounts published in newspapers were half fact, half satire. The public, when they heard of such stories, they just took it as a joke and just them writing some interesting story to put out in the newspaper to make sales. No one really believed it. So on one end, you have the spiritualists who are like, yay, President Lincoln, consult the spiritualist, he's one of us. On the other hand, traditional religious folk and skeptics were uneasy or scornful. So several years later, Nettie released a memoir basically sharing her experiences with President Lincoln. Some people believed it, some people didn't. Some people thought she was just writing something to sound interesting, while other people really could see how spiritualism had an impact on Abraham Lincoln's presidency, while other people said that he just entertained it because his wife was just so dubbed by grief that he was just doing anything to comfort her just so she could feel like she's communicating with her son. Like, oh, you're so sad about the son. Yes, let's go to the witch lady and talk it out, okay, baby? Like, he was just entertaining her but not actually believing it. So it was mixed reviews. People didn't know what to believe. So throughout all of this, the main thing to take away takeaway is spiritual practices aren't as rare or fringe as people like to pretend. Just because it's not happening out loud doesn't mean it's not happening at all. A lot of people, especially those in high places, have always had someone spiritual they turn to. Presidents, artists, business owners, and yeah, even the pastor's wife down the street. Some people go to therapy, some people go to church, and some quietly book a session, get a reading, and go through a whole seance. They go through people who could tap into the unseen. It's more common than you think. Just a lot of people keep it to themselves out of fear of judgment. Whether you believe in spirit guides, ancestral messages, or divine timing, the truth is this: seeking guidance outside the physical world has always been a part of human nature and the human experience. From the battlefield to the boardroom, from ancient temples to modern day living rooms, people have always looked for insight beyond what they see. So if you've ever felt weird or unsure about exploring your own spiritual path, take this as your confirmation that it's not strange, it's not evil, you're not doing anything wrong, and mainly you're not alone. You're part of a long line of people who've been listening to that deeper voice and trusting it even when the world tells them not to. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Share any stories that you have down below of someone who was seeking spiritual guidance that you did not know, and how did you find out, and what was your reaction, or what was your first experience seeking spiritual guidance? What messages did that person or that spirit tell you, and how did it make you feel afterwards? But thank you guys so much for tuning into this video, and like I always say, as above so below, as within so without, as the universe so the soul. Until next time you guys, Ashe, baby.